So James Dolan and Madison Square Garden are at a very unique position as the NBA begins to transition into streaming. And I believe this will eventually lead to them considering moving the team out of Madison Square Garden into a different arena. But we're going to break this down layer by layer. As the NBA transitioning into streaming has stripped away James Dolan one of the advantages that he had over all the NBA franchises, which is his local TV deal. The Knicks, unlike the rest of the league, don't have to worry about the local TV market kind of falling out, with Bally Sports filing for bankruptcy. Teams like the Phoenix Suns were on television for free last season. All you needed is an antenna if you lived anywhere in Arizona. The Houston Rockets had to scramble and create a new app in collaboration with the baseball team just to get their games to their fans. The Dallas Mavericks and 15 other NBA teams had to scramble in the same manner. But the Knicks having MSG network has always given them an advantage of not only being more lucrative than other teams, but also giving them a control over their business that other teams didn't have, including the large market teams like the Lakers and even the Golden State Warriors. And speaking of the Warriors, this is where they come into play here. That new Chase Center that they got, that is a money-making machine and has awakened a lot of NBA owners' eyes to the amount of money that they can make, not necessarily just in the arena, but creating an atmosphere around it, infusing it with tech and leisure. And this has catapulted the Warriors into a new stratosphere as far as making revenue. It was reported that they made over $300 to $400 million more than the Lakers and Knicks. But when you look underneath the surface, they got to get their costs down, because factoring that in, they didn't really make that much more than the Knicks. But that's something that's eye-opening to a lot of NBA owners. When you look into the Warriors ecosystem of having a stadium that's over 4 city blocks, they diversify their revenue by having an AI museum, multiple high-end restaurants, a steakhouse, a 74-foot screen outside the stadium that fans can watch the game. They have their own ticket exchange just for suites. And everything in and around the arena evolves around tech. So fans can more efficiently get food, get back to their seats, perhaps order and spend more money without waiting in long lines. And even in situations where the games are not being played in the arena, they have options like a farmer's market where they can not only make money off of vendors, but those same vendors will attract customers not necessarily attracted to the Warriors, thus giving that 4-block ecosystem that they have more visibility in the city. So you see how the Warriors started jumping up as being one of the highest evaluated teams in American sports. A lot of other NBA owners in recent years have inquired about new arenas. The 76ers even considered moving into New Jersey, just right outside of Philadelphia, just to get a new space because they recognize this formula. Same thing for the Washington Wizards. They almost broke a contract that they had out there just to go to Virginia. So that Chase Center has given the Warriors a competitive edge, the same edge that MSG gave the Knicks over the rest of the league. If the Warriors out there in Golden State is making all that money, you can only imagine if the Knicks had their own ecosystem around MSG instead of having an arena built on top of an MTA property. And now with the NBA transitioning into streaming and sort of doing a similar deal like the NFL has, where most of the games pretty much are going to be nationalized, you see where James Dolan is giving up a control of his business that he's had a competitive edge over for years. And ratings are down all across the board. It was reported that MSG stock was down 5% in the beginning of the year, but that does not matter because in the age of streaming, as long as you can garner an audience, it is very valuable. So James Dolan has a valid argument for bitching and complaining that the new TV deal is screwing him over. He's 100% right on that. But ESPN president John Skipper and former Marlins president David Samsung, as well as Pablo Torre, gave great insight to some of the inner nuances when it comes to James Dolan and the NBA's new TV deal. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
We had a funny way of describing George Steinbrenner. George Steinbrenner would go to owners' meetings, and he would vote against anything Bud Selig put to a vote, no matter what it was. Today is Tuesday. 29-1 was always the vote. Bud would get so angry that eventually the Yankees and George agreed not to go to any owners' meetings, which was a big step. Then the Yankees agreed to abstain. So then the votes would just be 29-0. And people would say, with the Yankees abstaining. Jim Dolan has become that. The owner of the Knicks was unhappy with the TV deal. that Adam Silver negotiated because he's unhappy with Adam Silver as a commissioner. So therefore, he would vote no on Tuesday following Monday. And in fact, he did vote no on this TV deal. And the impact of his no vote, so we're clear, is zero. Literally, it has no impact on the operation of the league. Jim Dolan can write letters to anyone he wants, which he did. It has zero impact. He has no leverage whatsoever. He's trying to get a block to be with him, saying, we're too many national games. We're losing our RSNs.
The problem James Dolan's going to have is that everyone else, they don't have his RSN business. They don't have an MSG network. They have a local deal with Fox Sports. Yo, James Dolan is by himself on this one. He does not have a coalition of owners that's going to side with him with that. Most of them is losing out on the business. And just going into streaming is going to be very interesting to see because MSG would have more exclusive games when the Knicks are a losing team. But when they are a more successful team, best believe NBC, Peacock, Amazon, all these other streaming companies are going to want Knicks games on their platforms. So going forward in this 11-year deal, as the Knicks are on the trajectory right now of being a good team, that's going to really equate to MSG having less exclusive games on their own platform. They're going to lose it to streaming. But if they suck, more games exclusively for MSG networks. Funny how that plays out.
MSG networks worth much less. Come with me, 29-1.
Well, he's the only one who has an asset like MSG, and it is a great asset. His incentives are to continue to protect MSG, which because of Yankee games and Knicks games and Ranger games, is worth more, I think, right now than any other standalone RSN. You think that's right, David?
So the Yankees are on yes. So there is an argument that yes and NESN and MSG are generally looked at the Mount Rushmore -1 of networks. And they're
local,
and they're of local,
networks.
Regionally owned sports networks owned by teams, but they're all in the crapper, is the truth.
And again, Jim Dolan's family has been in the cable business for many, many years.
And they sold out of that real quick. Yo, James Dolan family ahead of their time, boy. That is a dying business outside of internet.
He's trying to protect that asset. I'm sure he knows that he's not going to win the vote. He still has the right to register that he thinks his business would be better off with a different kind of deal with more local games. He is an anomaly. Nobody else's local games, though I think the Lakers get paid some tremendous amount of money for their local games. He wants to take the...
But it's still nowhere near MSG. The Lakers have no idea what revenue they're making from Time Warner. All they know is that they just get a check from them, but James Dolan sees the amount of revenue being made first. Then he hands out the necessary checks. That's the main difference. And this level of power is one of the reasons why the national media overall has issues with Dolan. He controls his whole ecosystem. So if he does not agree, your media credentials around his team could be revoked. And he has the infrastructure in place to put out his own segments and interviews. This level of control has created a lot of envy among many publications, especially in New York City, aka Daily News.
of being in New York City.
I totally understand what Jim Dolan was trying to do, and I don't blame him for attempting that. I never blamed the Yankees for being the Yankees. They're in New York. But the big difference that's going on now with team ownership is the entry prices have gone up so much. When you've got old-time owners arguing, George Steinbrenner in 1973, what was the number he paid for the Yankees? Let's say $7 million. Some out 70, some price that's just so crazy.
It was 17 or
17.
something.
It was there was a
He
7
bought
in
it
there
from
somewhere.
CBS.
Indeed. And this is back now 50 years ago.
10.3.
Amazing.
Take the under on these estimates.
So think about it as opposed to Josh Harris, who goes to an owner's meeting and sits there amongst people, Jerry Jones included, for what he paid for the Cowboys. He's sitting in a meeting saying, I just paid $6.5 billion. That's my basis. Jerry Jones' basis, when he bought, what did he pay? $370? Again, I don't know why that number's in my head, but that could have been what Dan Snyder paid.
$140 million
Golly.
in
Think
1989.
about it. They're in the same meeting. Rob Manfred had a quote this week that I think summed it up exactly perfectly when he was talking about networks and RSNs. Rob Manfred said it was a much better business when people were paying for things they didn't want. He actually said that.
Well, it may be a slightly ineloquent way to put it, but what he meant was if you just let us put it all in one bundle and charge you $120 right now, you'd be very happy. And that's not an untrue statement.
And the backbone of MSG Networks has been that very same business model. And so far, just looking at the MSG app, the Knicks charging, I believe it's $300 a year for their package. But yet League Pass is a lot cheaper than that. And you get all the games. And the Knicks have a second option where you could buy every single game for $10. There's a change in the consumer behavior in that transition that Dolan's trying to make from the bundling into streaming or direct to consumer. And the price points don't really match up. That's no shade to the MSG app. It's just the marketplace has better options, especially factoring that Amazon is included in this new TV deal. So down the line, whether Adam Silver takes away Dolan's leverage of having MSG or not, he's going to get hit over the head at some point, either by the consumer or the league themselves trying to force him to adjust his business model.
Jim Dolan said, quote, "The NBA has made the move to an NFL model, de-emphasizing and depowering the local market. This feels like a thing the NBA should want, but obviously Jim Dolan doesn't feel that way."
It's really they're trying to socialize, which the leagues are doing. You saw Don Garber do it with the package at MLS. NFL does it with all of their games. It's split evenly 32 ways. And what Adam Silver's trying to do, MLB's trying to do it, but they can't figure it out with all the teams right now, with the big market teams being in the way. And the Knicks are what I would consider a big market team in the NBA. And he's unhappy with anything that takes away his ability to maximize his profit.
I have a consistent point of view that the NBA will be advantaged by being the second league to go totally national and forget regional games. That doesn't mean that, and by the way, it will create more value. I have no doubt that it'll create more value over time.
It definitely will. And it's a model that's pretty much forced on the whole league, especially with Bally Sports filing for bankruptcy. The local RSN model for the NBA, it doesn't work. And the network carriers are not just going to offer a big bag for no reason. They're going to compare it to the actual ratings that's been happening. And in that case, the NBA is not going to have that much leverage. So in the process of that, the owners are going to outvote James Dolan when it comes to remaining in that infrastructure. And Dolan's going to have to pivot. Major pivot. He's going to have to find another advantage. And this is why I was saying earlier, the advantage might have to be him going and following the Warriors blueprint with that new arena. You can't really build an ecosystem around MSG on top of that MTA subway. So a major pivot is awaiting James Dolan, as the NBA entering streaming is going to definitely take away one of his key advantages.
The question is 1/30th of whatever Adam grows the league to because he does this. Jim may see some of his local revenue that if he'd put on top of the 1/30th he was getting before, he would have had more. A lot of clubs would have had less. And did you call it a socialist? I didn't know if you were socializing or you were socialisming.
I was actually, in this case, you can use both.
Oh, okay.
Because I think what Dolan wants to protect against in his mind is having anyone benefit from that which he has achieved.
As he should. Protecting his advantage is part of business. But on the flip side of the coin, Major League Baseball has taken the opposite direction of the NBA, allowing the teams to have full control of their local RSN business. And the fact that teams like the Dodgers and Yankees have an exclusive deal is tying Major League Baseball up from just doing one national deal that benefit all the teams, because they are included in that RSN business failure, because most of that league is going through the same things the NBA teams are going through. So now right here, we'll get a prime example if the NBA continues to stick to the model that James Dolan wants. As Evan Drellick of The Athletic perfectly explains, MLB's conundrum with allowing major market teams like the Dodgers and Yankees to have exclusive deals, leaving the rest of the MLB teams scrambling, as carriers like Diamond Sports no longer want to carry their games. You guys check it out, and every once in a while, I'll check in.
Well, the RSN landscape is collapsing and crumbling and falling apart. I mean, even if you just take baseball, Diamond dropped 2 teams, Arizona and San Diego, and they renegotiated 3 other teams. Cleveland, Texas, and Minnesota, their deal expired, but they re-upped on a 1-year deal. So that's basically a renegotiation. There are still 9 other teams that they haven't touched, right? So the majority of baseball teams that Diamond was working with, basically the perception you can walk away with is, well, those deals are working fine. And the reality is there isn't money established, consistent money coming in through streaming options yet, really, for anybody. I mean, Peacock losing more than $2 billion in 2023. So it's not going to disappear, at least not overnight. I think what you've heard people in baseball, Commissioner Rob Manfred talk about, and I hear some media consultants talking about, is this kind of modified world where the exclusivity gets lessened. So, you could broadcast the games simultaneously. Maybe you can stream them, and the rights fees get lessened. But the RSN team relationship still exists. And in baseball, it's going to become very important. It was important years ago for these exclusivity arrangements to be loosened, and they haven't been. And it means that, if you're in a Comcast territory, you want to watch the Twins, and you're a Comcast subscriber, well, you're not in a great spot here if you subscribe to Comcast, because there isn't this alternative streaming option that you can just sign up for available separately. So I think it's less doomsday and more an altered world. MLB would like to have a national in-market streaming package, MLB.TV, which has existed for years and is, in my opinion, a great product. You could just, it works pretty darn well, and you can watch any out-of-market game. Wouldn't it be nice for fans and customers and anybody who just wants to watch a game to have that as an option for in-market? So if I'm in New York, where I am, I want to watch the Mets or the Yankees, I can't do that through MLB TV, and this has been a long-running complaint that people have, and this has to do with the exclusivity deals that the RSNs make with the teams.
Just like James Dolan with MSG. But now with streaming, with that exclusive package is going away. But MLB just having so much inventory, all those games, I believe they have 168 games. That's going to be one hell of a task to take that away from the Yankees and the Dodgers, especially when streaming is not even proven to be profitable yet.
So what I was talking about before, where you get to this world where things get loosened, wouldn't it be great if both could exist? The RSN gets to broadcast the games, pays the team maybe less money than they do now, and also you could sign up through this package and get the games in the same way. I think that's the world that baseball would want the most, because that gives you still some set income, which, if baseball were only selling a national streaming package, it's a lot less predictable. People can walk away whenever, and sure, people can stop subscribing to cable, but once you get the box, typically you keep the box. We see cord cutters, but I think there's less variability of people going in and out of subscriptions when it comes to cable. So they want to be paid. I think that's overlooked here. It's like, yeah, do they want to have a national streaming package? Sure. If that means making a lot less money than they do now, they probably don't want it. But that's a little bit, cutting off your nose to spite your face, because they do need to broaden their reach. They do need to make it easier for people to access these games.
And that's the sacrifice Adam Silver is willing to make in order to have these games more nationally televised. It's crazy how Dolan's competitive edge over the whole league actually has come back to bite him, because him being on top of the mountain by himself, he has no allies. Oh, this is crazy how this played out. But once again, this may be the beginning domino effect of the Knicks making a move out of MSG. The money flowing out of that Warriors Chase Center It's, man, whew. They got these owners scrambling to get new arenas.
You know, now they're according to my colleague Andrew Marchand, nearing a deal with Roku. I mean, how many different places are you going to be able to watch a baseball game? It's just it's a little dizzying, and I think you lose people in a crowded landscape like that. These teams control their individual rights. The Yankees have their own deal with Amazon, but this national package that MLB was talking about, this in-market national package that the league that Manfred said he wanted to launch for 2025, was targeted to be about half the teams in the league, which you can argue is not enough to sell anyway, and some people do argue that. And so it's not so even if what you're saying is right and makes sense, and have Amazon do it, well, which teams do you have who are participating? And that's dependent in part on what deals are already in place. And again, this is why if Diamond emerges from bankruptcy, the deals that the Diamond teams have, they're still in place, right? If Diamond disappeared, there would be basically 12 teams that would have their rights back. You combine those with the handful of teams that MLB right now is producing and the teams have control of their rights over. Okay, now you got half the league, but you don't have it otherwise. And so there is this end game question. I don't even want to call it an end game, but at some point, if you're going to go to streaming, you've got to stop handing over exclusivity to the RSNs. And when the Twins deal got done with Diamond for this year, 1-year deal, same with the Rangers, same with the Guardians, there was exclusivity again. Diamond wanted that, and the teams via MLB granted that.
The NBA had a very similar conundrum. The only reason they got out of it is because in the bankruptcy that Diamond had filed, they renegotiated a deal where they gained all those teams' rights within a year. So within that same year, that's when they were eligible to negotiate with Amazon and NBC and Peacock. So the NBA had things fall in their lap so it could be set up that way. It's going to take major monumental shifts for MLB to have that same setup. In a way, it's unfortunate for James Dolan. All this came back to bite him in the ass. It's crazy how all these things tie in together. Keep in mind, right now we're seeing MLB teams and NBA teams collaborate together just to come up with an app or just a way of getting the games onto their customers. From the Padres to the Utah Jazz to the Houston Astros, Houston Rockets, Dallas Mavericks, the Phoenix Suns, the Arizona Diamondbacks, all these teams locally are collaborating on apps just to get the games out to their fans, as well as making the games accessible with just a TV antenna. The sports RSN business is definitely in the Wild West right now.
At some point, you got to stop doing that if you want to increase your reach, even if it means taking a little bit less money from Diamond. I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head. This is a classic big market, small market baseball division where, if you want to create an all 30 team package, okay, the Yankees sit there and say, my rights are X times more valuable than the Marlins. Are you paying me X times more to participate in your package? And the teams control their local rights. That's just the way baseball has always operated. So, and this is a years long process that's going to unfold. You need current deals to expire, and then you would have to have some alignment of teams and owners to say we do or don't want to pool together. I do come back to a reality of, wouldn't it be nice if I want to be able to watch the 2024 Major League Baseball season? Can I sign up for something that lets me do that? Right? There's a very basic thing here that kind of unfortunately, falls by the wayside because of this setup. And I got to tell you, it's one of. I found all this stuff when I first started covering it, maybe a bit intimidating. It is actually among the most fascinating things that I've come across, and because it controls everything, right? The amount of money that comes from the RSNs or whoever is paying for your TV rights influences how much money the teams are going to spend, influences the rosters, it's influences labor deals. It really is kind of the thing from which everything else flows. And so it's not to get all kind of existential about it, but it is. It's a big deal. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
That's why we see so many owners selling the teams, from Mark Cuban to Glenn Taylor, and now these Celtics are up for sale. The current landscape and the future one in streaming are both questionable, but the NBA entering into streaming, that's a whole different ecosystem. The way the audience engages, completely different. The ratings are going to be a lot less, and depending on the details of the deals, will they not only have a way of tracking the data, but also a third-party way of accessing the true metrics so they can use that to negotiate in the future? There's a lot of key aspects to the sports business that these leagues are giving up by signing up for streaming. There's a lot of questions to be asked. Oh man, we'll see how this plays out. But you understand the pushback, and for James Dolan to look for new monetization strategies. The idea of a new arena doesn't seem that crazy. He's in the same conundrum as major soccer clubs from the other side of the world, like Chelsea, Manchester United. They play in old historical stadiums. But when you see how the ownership groups move, when they have those teams play a bunch of games in the US during their preseason, they'll tell you that the modernized American soccer stadiums, it allows them to monetize the audience in different kinds of ways that they can't in the legacy stadiums that they play in Europe. But the fan bases are so attached to those arenas. Like the one Manchester United plays in, I believe it's called Old Trafford. That fan base is attached to that arena, very similar to how us Knicks fans are attached to MSG. But we'll see. This is a very unique time and space, and James Dolan's going to have to give up a level of control of his business to embetter the NBA as a whole and access to the audience. But yet that access in streaming has yet to be proven profitable. Interesting times.